Think about Joseph. His brothers had a say. They were jealous of him, betrayed him, sold him into slavery. Potiphar's wife, the man Joseph worked for, she had a say. She lied about him. Joseph was put in prison. He had all these negative voices, negative circumstances in Joseph's life. He could have lived bitter, but he understood this principle. After all the bad breaks, he was suddenly brought out of prison and made the prime minister of Egypt, second in command. What am I saying? When God has the final say, it will make up for all the injustice, all the delays. You are not falling behind. You're not losing ground. One touch of God's favor will put you 50 years down the road. Not in age, but in influence, in position, in opportunity. I believe, like Joseph, you're about to see God step in and override what's been hindering you. You're about to come into a final word in your health, in your relationships, in your finances. That struggle may seem permanent, like you'll never get ahead. God is about to override the lack, the limitations, the people that have held you back, and release you into new levels of influence, increase, abundance. The final word is you will lend and not borrow. You are above and not beneath. Or maybe you were raised in dysfunction, depression, addictions. The final word is coming. God is about to break those yokes that have held you back so you can step up to who you were created to be. The final word is freedom, wholeness, abundance, and victory. In the scripture, two sisters, Mary and Martha, and their brother Lazarus were close friends with Jesus. Lazarus became very sick. Jesus was in another city, so Martha sent word for Jesus to come pray for their brother. They had seen Jesus heal people, open the eyes of the blind, turn water into wine. They knew he could do miracles. Jesus got the word, but he stayed in that city for a day, 2 days, 3 days. Then their worst nightmare came true. Lazarus died. They were devastated. 4 days later, Jesus showed up. Has it ever felt like God came too late? You prayed, you believed, you asked, but the problem didn't turn around? Martha said, Jesus, if you would have been here, if you'd have just come when we asked, my brother wouldn't have died. She could have turned away, lived bitter, angry. That would be the end of the story. But she went on to say, Lord, even now, I know whatever you ask, God will do it for you. She was saying, yes, it looks bad. It seems impossible, but I know you have the final say. Jesus said to them, take me to where you buried Lazarus. Take me to the tomb. He was saying, take me to the place where you quit believing. Take me to where you decided you're not going to get well. You'll never meet the right person. Unless you go back to that place and stir your faith up, it will limit what God can do. They went to the tomb. Jesus told them to roll away the stone. Martha said, Lord, he's been dead for 4 days. He's going to stink. The stone represents what you've given up on. You think it's been too long, too late, it's never going to happen. So you put the stone on the promise, the stone on the dream. You have to do your part and roll away the stone. You have to start believing again. Get your passion back. They removed the stone, but Jesus didn't go in the tomb and lay hands on Lazarus like he did the blind man and some other people that he healed. This time he spoke, said, Lazarus, come forth. Instantly, Lazarus woke up. He came out of the tomb on a word from the Lord. Now, Jesus may not be here in person today, but we have what Lazarus had. You can come out on a word from God. God says, you will live and not die. Let that take root. You can come out on that word. God says, whatever you touch will prosper and succeed. There's a word you can come out on. For whom the Son sets free is free indeed. There's a word that breaks bondages. What God says in the scripture is the final word. It's significant that Jesus waited 4 days to pray for Lazarus. He could have healed him the first day. He knew he was sick. Or at least the second day, not made them go through so much. But there's always a reason for a delay. We may not understand it, but God knows what He's doing. And while you're waiting for a situation to turn around, waiting for your health to improve, waiting for your child to get on the right track, that's a critical time. You have to pass the test of waiting. If Martha would have stayed negative, bitter, complaining, she could have stopped the miracle. Will you stay in faith when heaven is silent? Will you wait with a good attitude and keep thanking God that He has the final say when you don't see anything improving? How you wait will determine whether or not the situation changes. And back in those days, the Sadducees, these were the people that were very against Jesus. They believed that the spirit left the body 3 days after the person died. It wasn't a coincidence that Jesus waited till the 4th day. He did it so that when He raised Lazarus, there wouldn't be any doubt about it. Sometimes God will wait on purpose, so you not only know it's His favor, but so all of your critics, your neighbors, your relatives, your co-workers, they won't be able to deny the goodness of God in your life. I talked to this lady. Her son was diagnosed with muscular dystrophy when he was 6 years old. He got to the point where he couldn't walk. When he was 12, he had to have surgery on his feet and heels. It was a routine procedure, but something went wrong. He ended up in ICU on a ventilator, couldn't breathe on his own. His other organs started to shut down, his heart, his liver, his kidneys. He had to go on dialysis. The doctors told this mother that they didn't think he was going to make it. She kept praying and believing, but everything went downhill. Got so bad, they needed to put him on a machine to bypass his heart and lungs. Basically, he would be on life support, just waiting to pass. They went to get the paperwork for the mother to sign to give them permission. While she was waiting, the doctors came running in. They said, "Hang on, you don't need to sign. There's been a sudden change." They couldn't explain it, but his heart started working. His blood pressure stabilized. His lungs began to function. They couldn't understand how one moment he was dying and the next moment he was coming back to life. Friends, God has the final say. If it's not your time to go, you're not going to go. The scripture says, the number of your days God will fulfill. You don't have to fulfill it. God's going to fulfill it. Nothing can snatch you out of His hands. Cancer can't take one day that God has planned for you. That sickness cannot take you before your time. He planned all of your days before you were born, and He's promised to fulfill the number of your days. This young man totally recovered. He's no longer on dialysis. His heart is fine. His lungs are fine. He's fulfilling His purpose. But you may be in a situation like the mother. Doesn't seem like it'll ever turn around. Dream that looks impossible. An addiction that seems permanent. I believe you're going to hear what she heard. There's been a sudden change. Something has happened that we can't explain. You thought you had reached your limits. Suddenly you're promoted. The company wants you to run the department. You thought you'd always struggle with the illness, the addiction. Get ready for a sudden change. Forces of darkness are being broken. Any area where you're not living in victory is not permanent, it's temporary. God has the final say.